We are just a few hours away from President Biden's first joint address to Congress. And with the first 100 days of his administration in the books, Biden is taking aim at some big action items. And the list is long: infrastructure, home health care, and now education, childcare, and paid family and medical leave. All of this will largely be funded by taxing companies and the rich. It is a return of big government. So I want to bring back in Bloomberg News White House reporter Jordan Fabian with more. Jordan, always good to speak with you. Tonight's address will be a wish list of what Biden wants to do. And there's going to be a lot of negotiating and compromising among the Democrats, lawmakers, before anything can come to fruition. But would you say there's a recognition that the time of shrinking and minimal government is over, perhaps even among Republicans?
You know, Scarlett, I would say that among elected Republicans, it's most certainly not over. The center of their opposition to Biden's policies is that they don't want these taxes to go up, even taxes on the rich, like corporate capital gains taxes for the top bracket. But they are a little more open to spending on infrastructure than perhaps they were in past years. But again, I think the Biden folks are looking more broadly to support among the public, whether these kind of policies are getting support among Republican voters seeking to define bipartisanship. But again, it's pretty entrenched opposition to these big tax and spend policies among Republicans in Washington still.
Okay, so that's why he's taking his case directly to the public. And in many ways, none of this is new, right? Presidents always try to sell their ambitious agendas to the public. But one thing that is different this year is that President Biden is working with two women to get his priorities through Congress. Vice President Kamala Harris, who cast the tie-breaking vote in the Senate, and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who in the past has made clear that she would not help President Trump with his initiatives. Can you tell us more about how effective each of these women are at building consensus, whipping votes?
Certainly. And first of all, we're going to see a historic image at this address tonight because the president is going to be flanked by those two women, Speaker Pelosi and Kamala Harris, sitting behind him on the rostrum while he delivers that address. But the president is definitely going to be leaning on Nancy Pelosi to wrangle those votes in the House. Given how narrow the Democratic majority is there, he's going to need all the votes he can get to pass his agenda. And Nancy Pelosi has spent decades in Washington. She's a master vote counter. And so he's definitely going to be counting on her. And Kamala Harris spent less time in the Senate than Nancy Pelosi, certainly. She has some relationships with a handful of Republican senators. She's been talking to them throughout the Biden administration. And so the president will be deploying her as well, and on a more limited basis, perhaps for one-on-one negotiations with Congress. But she will be also playing a public role in trying to build public support for those policies.
How well does she know Joe Manchin, the senator from West Virginia, who is going to be key and critical here because without him, the Democrats can't get anything done?
It's funny you mentioned Joe Manchin because there was a dust-up earlier this year when the White House was trying to push through their coronavirus aid package. She cut an interview in a West Virginia news station really urging the senator to pass that bill. But I guess, or somebody at the White House declined to let the senator know that she would be going on the air in his home state, and that caused a bit of a kerfuffle. They've since apparently smoothed things over, but definitely some tension there remaining from the earliest days of the administration.
So one argument that people can make against big government, and I'm sure this is something Republicans have pointed out in the past, is just look at what's happening in Europe, right? They have high taxes and they have slower growth as a result. So what upside can Team Biden offer to its plans to offset any potential loss in GDP?
I think they can point to two things, which they have already, which is, in the post-war decades of the mid-20th century, GDP growth was higher, and that was a time when there was more government spending and more higher tax rates comparatively. And they would also point to the argument that while the GDP growth has been relatively strong compared to Europe, they make the point that the gains have not been evenly shared and that there's still massive income inequality. The wage growth has not kept up with GDP growth. And so that's the argument that they're making is with these transformational policies they're trying to push through, that too many people have been left behind and that all the massive disruption that has been caused by the COVID pandemic has only exacerbated it, which they say has given them a window to try and push through these big changes.
Got it. Jordan, thank you so much for putting this all into perspective. $1 trillion here, $1 trillion there. Pretty soon it really adds up. Jordan Fabian, our White House reporter.
Hey, thanks for watching Bloomberg Quick Take Now. Subscribe to our channel to see the biggest stories the moment they happen from around the world. And tune in to our 24/7 live stream for global news coverage, documentaries, interviews, deep dives, and shows on the stories that you care most about.